Good afternoon, board members. Thank you for taking the time to come and hear about gamification. I hope you learned something new today, but let's start with an explanation of what gamification is. Stephen Dale from Warwick Business School talks about gamified learning, or the gamification of learning, as defined as the use of game design elements in non-game settings in order to increase motivation and attention on tasks. Basically what this means is we're taking the elements of video gaming and the productivity and focus that students are using with that and redirecting them into curriculum points. So let's take a look at what this actually means for implementation in the classroom. So the Practitioner's Guide towards the Gamification of Education talks about 5 steps needed for teachers to take in order to implement gamification. As you can see, the first 4 of them are actually very similar to what we already do for every educational experience we create in our classrooms. So they talk about gamification directly affects engagement and motivation, and it indirectly leads to acquiring more knowledge and skills. So the process of implementation into the classroom is actually not very different from what we are already doing. So let's move on to some of the research out there regarding gamification. It's important to note that gamification is not necessarily a new concept. The business world has been using it for quite a while. Stephen Dale from the Warwick Business School talks about the 6 elements needed for a gamification to be successful. They include achievements, exercises, community synchronicity, transparent results, time limits, and luck. Now, I would argue that these elements actually show up in our classrooms too. We need achievements and transparent results. We know that students work better when they have immediate feedback for the work they do. We have exercises. Good classrooms are built on community synchronicity and our students working well together. Time limits, whether we like it or not, it is a part of our classrooms. We have time limits on our classes times. We have time limits on the amount of time we spend on each activity. All of those play into it. And luck, whether we like it or not, is also a part of it. You do not get to choose what class you're in, with which students and which teacher you have, and whether or not you're going to have chemistry with that teacher. It's all a part of what's already elements of our educational realm, which makes the elements of gamification quite simple to implement it into our classrooms because we're already doing most of it and the process is not that dissimilar. So let's take a look at some of the statistics regarding this idea. So there are 183 million active gamers playing 13 hours a week on average, and we know that there are people that play much more than that. About 80% of learners say that they would be more productive if their university or institution or work was more game-like. Over 60% of learners would be more motivated by leaderboards and increased competition among students. That surprised me. And 89% say that the point system would increase their engagement with an e-learning application. And by 2018, the global gamification market will reach $5.5 billion. Okay, let's take a closer look at the analysis of gamification. So I wanted to just show you a little bit of an example of what a gamification can look like. Classcraft is an online, basically game world where students they create their own characters, they can earn points, and they're actually working in teams. They earn points for participating in class, anything the teacher would like them to be earning their points for, and they're called HP points, so they're life points, and they can actually lose them as well. The neat thing about Classcraft is if a student falls in battle, so they lose all their points and they fall in battle, everyone on their team loses 10 HP points. They can actually work together to protect someone who is losing HP points. They can collaborate together to make sure that everyone on their team is actually succeeding. And so it's taking all the elements of awesome gameplay and putting it into the control of the teacher so that they can focus them on learning. Another example of this type of gameplay would be Class Dojo and any other things where you are giving out points for student behavior and achievements and all those things. There's so many great opportunities to be involved in this. So let's take a look at the pros associated with gamification. Contrary to popular thinking, games are not so much a tool for escapism, but rather a way to use our best selves. Gamers are extremely productive and collaborative within the realm of a game. This is not something I thought about so much. I don't know about you, but when I get home and my brain is stressed or whatever, I'll sit down and play a simple little game just to be able to shut my brain off. The reality is you're not shutting it off, you're just redirecting it. And if you watch a student playing something like Fortnite, they are the most productive and most focused they will ever be. Gamification simply takes that focus and that production and redirects it towards productive learning instead of just playing games. So with the pros come the cons. So let's take a second and look at what that could mean for our school. What could go wrong? Teacher attitude and student buy-in. These two things are actually very closely related. It's important to note that if our teachers are not feeling supported or have enough training in being able to implement something new like this, they will feel frustrated, which will in turn affect our student buy-in. If we're supporting our teachers and giving them the chance to see the benefits of this, they will be excited, and so will our students. There's one more element that I think specifically our school needs to make sure we're addressing, and that would be our parent buy-in. We have a lot of parents who are going to not be too excited about the idea of their students being online more often. And so again, I think it's very important that we're making sure we are taking the time to educate parents, hearing their concerns and addressing them so that they can actually be on board with this as well. If they are not, we are going to be fighting against it the entire way. So I think this element definitely needs to be addressed, and we will have to come up with a way to make sure we're presenting this in a way that seems appealing and helpful, and that we're just not sending their students online for more time of gameplay. With those thoughts in mind, my recommendation is as follows. I think it's very important that we create a council with student representation, with parent representation, with teacher representation to talk about the idea of implementing classcraft or something along those lines for school-wide student success. Once we have those voices heard, and I think that the buy-in is created at that level, then sending it out to the entire school will be something that is much smoother and much more successful. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you've learned something new today.